I met Michael at a corner gas station on an early fall night at 9 p.m. after running back home to grab my ID so I could buy a pack of something. And he insisted that I call him Mike. I came through the prop doors and greeted a scruffy, orange-clad man whose voice was rasped and eroded from years of chain smoking, or so I thought. He was overtly charismatic for no good reason. This gas station was trash. His jacket was trash, and the people he dealt with every day, along with his pay grade, were also probably trash. You could tell he'd been through it, but still, he felt steady. He felt warm. Then again, so do forest fires when they're first put out. I bought Camels and a lighter for $7, and I struck one up while leaning up against the rail on the concrete patio outside. Mike followed through the doors that had been prepped and propped open and grabbed a lawn chair and then grabbed another. He had an itinerant draw. I always keep two just in case. We sat down. I lit up and the cool of the menthol numbed and singed its way through my nostrils. Mike pulled out a cigarette from behind his ear and lit it with a beige Bic that he slipped back into his pocket through a hole outside his ratty jacket. The smoke settled into the air and Mike settled into the scene. You know, he said between drags, I played APA in Vegas, professional and all. Really? Yes, sir. Big time high roller shit. Big suits, big money, rolled cigars. He pulled his parliament away from his lips, rolling it between his fingers as if it were a premium Presidente. Made it all the way to the final round before I went all in on an ace high. Just an ace? Just an ace. I thought the cocksucker across from me was bluffing, but he wasn't. No, he was not. No shit. No shit. But it was crazy. I mean, Vegas fucking crazy, man. The lights, the liquor, the women. Nothing like it. You ever been? Only passing through. Never gambled, though. Oh, shit, man. You have no idea. I mean, on that point, at least he was right. I was 19. My family had strolled through Vegas on a road trip once at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. We had a late lunch at a Hard Rock Cafe at some mall that was 9 miles from the Strip. I didn't even know what APA was, to be honest. I assumed that it was just some kind of poker thing. I genuinely had no fucking idea. But Mike did. In many ways, it seemed like it was all he had. I don't think I believed him, at least not his story in the slightest. I doubted whether this 40-year-old man in the 5-year-old Osiris's and God knows how old Hollister hoodie had about as much money in his checking account as I did, let alone enough to hit the casinos. But the feeling, the sentiment behind what he was saying, that felt true. Mike really wanted to have been right there, duking it out with the big dogs in Vegas, to be something else. And in that moment, I guess so did I. I guess I really don't. I've traveled a bit, though. Is that right? It was. Yeah, mostly camping, a lot of backpacking, as was that. Even took a crack at the PCT, the Pacific Crest Trail, you know? It wouldn't have mattered if he did, because Lord knows I didn't. The what now? From Mexico to Canada, 3 months straight, just walking along a trail. Get the fuck out of here. That's what I said. Right around California, I said, enough of this shit. I'll just take a plane. Mike laughed at that, and so did I. It felt good. At that point, someone had rolled up to to pump 4 and began strolling towards the bodega. Mike groaned and lifted up to go greet him. I'll be right back. Sure. I slid out my phone while trying to keep the Camel from slipping out of my mouth. I'd never really smoked on purpose before that night. At least I'd never bought my own. The screen buzzed on. It'd only been a week. I had yet to change my background. It felt silly, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Every time I went to, I just ended up staring at the photo, and tonight was no different. I remember that day. It was late summer. Cicadas were buzzing, and it smelled like sprinklers and fresh lawns, but you could feel it turning in the air. School was going to start soon. We sat right next to each other, real close, and she shot me the slyest little smirk, and I remember feeling butterflies in my stomach because of it. We'd later find out from her mom, whom we hadn't told at that point in time, that was what gave it away, that she knew right in that moment what was going on. She wore black shorts and Chuck Taylors and a French tucked tee, and I only remember that because she had spent a good deal of time picking at my red cargo shorts and flip-flops. Why do you need that many pockets? Who wants to see your toes? We'd gotten ice cream, and her little siblings had insisted on getting cones they weren't able to handle at all. They started to topple down on them, and she reached out to try to save them. And in that moment, I reached over and stole a bite of her coffee hibiscus vanilla combo, just as her mother snapped a picture. She was mad, but not actually, or maybe just a little, because it was something she teased me relentlessly about over the next 2 years. I don't know. What do you know? What's that? That fella's got a collectible. You see that? Old Oldsmobile, 1960, I'd say. Really? Oh, yeah. My father used to drive one of them. Is that right? Oh, yeah. We'd go cruising for miles. He'd bounce me on his legs. Sometimes he'd let me steer even. He let you steer? How old were you? 6 or 7, not too bad. Mike lit up another Parliament, his 4th or 5th since I'd been there of the night. He moved back down here recently. I helped him build up his house down in Pueblo. The place was a wreck. You should have seen it, man. I mean, those walls were so grimy the dirt would come off as you rubbed your finger off of them. I know about that. I mean, maybe not your dad's house, but I mean, this one time we stayed at a cabin up in the mountains. I swear to God, this place was haunted or something. But you walked in, and the first thing that hit you was the smell. I mean, God damn, it must have been a skunk in or something. I hate fucking skunks. Plain and simple at this point, there's no other way to put it. The two of us were outright lying. We were reacting, but neither of us were really listening, just waiting to see how the other could heighten. Mike played APA. I hiked the PCT. And he lived in Malibu working as a handyman on a beachfront property. I'd almost gone national playing rugby before injuries took me. All of it was wrong, literally wrong, but it felt harmless and fun. Some stories were spurred by memory. Others were fabricated entirely out of thin air. Like any drug, I guess it was a nice distraction, but it was only just that. For me, every story would somehow find its way back to her. And I'd kick myself for being so hung up on something that shouldn't have been such a big deal. It was just a breakup, man. Mike would finish some tangent about biking cross country, and I'd wander off, and there she'd be on her purple bike, stopping by the house for the first time. I'd finished about the hardest hit I ever laid on anybody on the field, and There she was around the corner, hanging her head, sobbing as she found out that the court had given her siblings to her stepdad over her mom. I'd go off about being lost in the mountains for days on end. And there she was, sitting right next to me, telling me how she wanted to end it just as much as I did. I couldn't get away. But it seemed like Mike could, though. And in that moment, I wanted to do the same. So I took my cues from him. I'm telling you, I've never seen a fish so fucking big in my life. I believe it. I mean, this thing could have fed all of Malibu. Huge fucker. As he gestured, his wallet fell out of his jacket pocket. I reached down to pick it up and saw a photo of a little girl sitting on Mike's lap. He was younger then. He had the same buzz cut, a few less scars, and a lot more teeth, and his smile. I handed it back to him and didn't think. I just asked, "That's your daughter?" "What's that?" he said, retreating back. He clammed up. The toothy grin in the photo no longer matched the glum look he wore now. He furrowed his brow and looked down at the photo, almost confused, trying to make sense of something. And just like that, he was lost for a bit. I'd hit a nerve. And I didn't know what to say or how to back out. But the silence crept up in the air, and it boiled over, and I couldn't take it. For whatever reason, I said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" "You don't have to be. It's been a while, a long time. I don't see her much anymore." He stared at the photo as he rubbed his callous thumb over her face. "She, you know, no. She's just with her mother." He sucked his teeth. "With Angela." I saw rage wash over him, and then I saw him turn toward the empty suburban road. "She, for whatever reason, when she was little, she was just the most stubborn little thing." I sat back. I let him go. The funniest thing, I came home one day from work and I was chopping some lemons up for a Corona, and she comes bounding around the corner with this little squeaky voice of hers, and she goes, "Daddy, what you doing?" So I told her, I said, "I'm chopping lemons for me, too sour, you wouldn't like them." And boy, if there's one thing she hated more than anything, it was being told what she would and would not do. And so she looks me up and down and crosses her arms and stomps her foot, and she goes, "You don't know." I said, "Oh, but I'll bet I do." And of course, she hits me back with a resounding, "Nuh-uh." He threw his arms up in the air, miming a surrender. And at that point, I mean, my entire argument was just done, over. The great debater, you know? What could I say? So I figure, fine, let's just put an end to this. I hand her a lemon and I say, "All right, Adeline, go ahead. I'm sorry, try the lemon." And I hand her the biggest wedge on the counter. And what does she do? She shoves the whole fucking thing in her mouth. I mean, the whole thing, rind and all, and she starts chewing. He began cracking up. I could see it on her face. She fucking hated it the second it hit her tongue. But what does she do? She just keeps chewing and chewing. And I swore she even had a tear or two running down her cheeks a little. And so I asked, "How is it, Adeline?" And she, mouthful of lemon, mind you, she looks at me all pouty faced and she goes, "It's good." And she says "good," and the lemon flies out of her mouth over the floor. And I say, "Well, you don't have to eat more of it if you don't like it. No one's making you." And she goes, "I do like it." And she snatches a whole half of the lemon I had in my hand and runs off to her room. After a good 10-minute tantrum, she comes skipping out into the hallway like nothing happened. And I go into her room, And I see she's got the lemon on her pillow, and she's taking a whole 3 bites out of it like it was a fucking apple. And he lost it. And I did too. I don't know if he made it up, but it damn near sounded like the most authentic thing we'd heard all night. Even if it wasn't real, it felt like it stemmed from a real sort of truth. As we laughed, as it went on, it was less about poor Adeline and more a release. All night we'd been dipping and dodging the things that matter, and it wasn't until we finally took a fraction of a good look at them that either of us felt any sort of relief. It brought us back down to earth, I suppose. I looked at my clock. It'd been an hour and a half. I told my family I'd only be gone for a few minutes, or at least that's what I told Mike on my way out. Hey, I'll see you around. Sure thing, man. Stop by anytime you see I'm working. Will do. I hopped in my car and looked down at my phone. I didn't change my background that night, but I found a nice looking aesthetic picture of the aftermath of a parade on Instagram. Confetti lined the streets, and an old man with a broom swept it up as the floats continued on. I saved it to my phone. Maybe later, I thought to myself, and then I turned the key.